Okay, so now that we've got all the stuff graded, now we can start creating our actual surface. So first thing we want to do is go up to grading, and then we go to grading creation tools. Now it's going to open up this grading creation toolbar. We don't have any group in here, we don't have a surface in here. So what we want to do is make sure that we set the grading group. So first thing we do is we hit this first button over on the far left side of the toolbar, and we select the site. This is important. Make sure you set the lot grading site. The site that has all these feature lines. Whichever site that's on, that's what this site needs to be set at. Otherwise it won't recognize it. So hit OK. And now what do we want to call it? I'm going to call this just lot grading. Okay, I want to make an automatic surface creation. And do we want to use the group name? Yes or no? I'm actually going to uncheck that because I'm going to change the name. If you can leave it as is, and it's just going to name the surface lot grading. Actually, I'll just leave it as is. No point in changing it. Style is 1 in 5 design. Now, all this tessellation stuff, don't worry about it. Just leave it as default. Now, volume-based surface, probably just leave it unchecked because it's probably going to give you an error anyways. So we'll just hit OK. Okay, now we have our tin surface. Now if we were to change the name, we could change it here, but it's going to name it lot grading. Hit OK to accept it. Now that we have this, now we're ready to start grading. Now this initial part's pretty easy. All you need to do is go to this drop down right here, hit the drop down, hit the create infill. It's going to give you this little pick cursor. Now every time you get in an area that's going to let you grade, it's going to highlight it in blue. So I'm just going to start here, click, and every time you've selected one already, it gives a little diamond. Click, 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 click. So there's 3 parts per lot basically. Go to the next one. This one I had a couple more. Click, 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 click. Just be careful not to pick the part inside the road. It might give you an option to do that. Just don't do that because it will create a surface in there that we don't want. Okay, so I got around that edge. Make sure I go around the top edge. And once you've already selected it once, it's not going to let you select it again. So that blue highlighting goes away. Okay, I'm just going to accept as is. Just right click to accept it because I can always come back in and add more later. But now you see there's a surface already started to create in here in my lot grading. So if I were actually to select my surface, I could take an object viewer and I could flip it up on its end and look and see what it's doing. Already I can see I must have missed a lot. So I'm going to go back. Now here's all you have to do is hit the infill button again and I can go back. So apparently I missed this lot. Now I'm going to finish up by doing the insides. I'm only putting it in areas where I did grading. right click after I'm done to accept it. And of course it disappeared on me. Try to do a regen all just to see if it comes back. Alright, so it should create your surface and it shouldn't have any issue like that. I'm gonna pause it just to see what I got going on here. Okay, so it turned out it didn't like the surface style, so all I had to do was go back. If I go to the lot grading under the surfaces in the prospector tab, if I go to surface properties, if I change that surface style to like contours 2 and 10 design instead of the 1 and 5, they come back. Not quite sure why that's doing that, but that's okay. 2 and 10 work just fine. So now I've got my surface in basically. I can right click, take a look at my object viewer now, make sure I have everything in there. So now you can see that things are starting to take shape a little bit. It's still a pretty flat area, so we're not seeing much of a change in elevation just because we don't have much to deal with or to work with in there. So now that I've got that surface, now what I can do is I can do an analysis on this surface in the areas that I've got to see, you know, what if everything meets the right elevations and all that and slopes. One thing I can do is I can actually fill these in since I've got that stuff there already. So I'm gonna go back to my grading creation tools. As long as you've got the grading group set to where you had it before, I can just go back to my infill again. I'm going to infill these little pieces here just to make sure that I've got those included in my surface. Okay, so now basically everywhere I've got my lots. Now don't worry about, I'm not worrying about this yet, I'll get to that later because that's more, in my site, is more industrial area, possibly some parks, possibly some ponds. So things I'm concerned about now is basically the lots. So I'm going to close out of that grading. Now that I've got the grading all set, I'm going to actually go and change the analysis style of that surface. So if I go over under surfaces here, I right click on lot grading and I go to surface properties. Now I've got this analysis tab. If I click on the analysis tab, I want to analyze it, the analysis type, drop it down. I want to analyze by slopes. Okay, so I hit the slopes. Now I want to do basically 3 different ranges. A range less than 1%, between 1% and 25%, and greater than 25%. So I'm going to go in here and hit the number of ranges and change that to 3. I'm going to hit the little down arrow so it kicks that down to the bottom. Now first range I want to do is from 0% up to 1%. Then the next range I want to do is from 1% to 25%. And the last range from 25% to the default maximum slope that's there. And then I'm going to adjust the color schemes. So I'm going to say if my slope is less than 1%, I'm going to just make that, let's say, a bluish color. Okay. If it's good, I'm going to make it green. So between 1 and 25%, which is 4 to 1. If it's over, if it's too steep, change that color to red. So that's the color scheme that will show up. So I'm going to hit OK to accept that. Now you'll see nothing changed. It's because we haven't displayed it yet. So if I go and right click on lot grading again and go to edit surface style, now under the display tab under the surface style, we need to make sure we go down and we need to turn slopes on. So if I turn slopes on and hit OK, it might take a little while, but now it's analyzed the whole area. So now if I zoom in here, I can see. So if you remember, green is good, blue is when it's less than 1%, which is the building pads, which is fine. Okay, red is where it's steeper than the 25%. So I've got some issue back here. I've got some issue back here. Otherwise, I'm fairly okay. I got a little bit of issue here. Might want to just revisit that and see what's going on. Got a little bit of issue here. Okay, looks like there's something going on right here, so that I'll have to look at. Possibly right in here as well. So I might want to just take a look at some of these slopes and make some adjustments. So let me just start off with these blue ones that are kind of easy to tell right here. So I'm going to right click on my lot grading, go to surface style. I'm going to turn off the slopes for now. Okay, so I had an issue right here. So I'm going to click on this feature line, look at my elevation editor. Okay, so I was at a 1%, so I know I'm okay there. What about this line here? Make sure I'm sloping down. Okay, so I'm good there with my slopes. Okay, so probably just a triangulation issue, which is probably not that big a deal. So I'm going to go back to my surface style, turn my slopes back on. So this little one, I'm not going to worry about too much. Probably this one I'm not going to worry about much either, but I'm going to double check. So I'm back to surface style, turn off slopes. Okay, so most likely it's just a triangulation issue in this area. But when we smooth things out, it should be fine. Again, go back to my surface style, turn slopes back on, go to analyze some other portion. Okay, right here I've got an issue with this being greater than a 4:1 slope. So one thing I can do is if I want to take a look and see what that slope is, I can actually go in and check that as well. So I could actually go to my analyze tab, go to my inquiry tool, and go surface elevation and grade between points. Choose my lot grading. Now if I go from this building corner down to this point here, it tells me that I am my 0.1 elevation, my 0.2 elevation, and should tell me my slope. All right, there we go. Some glitch here for some reason. So it's going at actually at the 4:1 slope, so it's just at the borderline. So I'm okay with that. Again, when we apply smoothing to it, it probably will go away. And this is just an issue with the contour line stuff, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, the back lot here, let me do another inquiry tool and pick my 0.1 coordinate as this point, my 0.2 coordinate as, say, this point. Accept that. Okay, so it's 42% right in here, so it's a lot more than what I want, so I would probably have to do some changing in here. So I'm going to close out of the inquiry tool and take a look and see what I got going on. So I got a low point here, so basically this would have to be risen up. So if I select that feature line right here, I got a point here and a point here. Take a look at my elevation editor for that. Okay, so I got a low point. So my low point is this 1038. This point here is at 1041. So I've got 2%. So if I basically make the grade ahead here at a -1%, which should bring up this up. So now it's at a minus 3.4%. Most likely, if I were to add an elevation point right there and accept that elevation, most likely that red should get fixed. Yeah, it's starting to, and it's probably just more so a tin line issue here. So I'm going to accept that. That's going to be good enough. Come to this side here. So again, if I put an elevation point in between here, we might end up with some stuff getting fixed. Again, it might still be kind of steep. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of steep. So again, if I close out of this, take a look at my inquiry tool and do some analyzing of what that grade is between the two. I'm going to choose basically the midpoint here for my point 1, my point 2. I'm going to choose nearest. So I got a 45%, again, pretty steep. So I could take a look at what these 2 points here are doing, adjust to see if I can fix it. Most likely the issue is because this lot pad is so far back here. So it's not really in the best location. It's too close to the back. Now, since that's right at the tail, at the edge, I'd probably be okay with that. I could take a look at this feature line and see what I've got going on if I look at my elevation editor. So basically, yeah, I'm at the 1.4%, so there's not really much I can do there besides making another high point and putting in another catch basin. So I'm going to accept that, just go as is with that. And really everything else looks pretty decent as far as the grading goes for the surfaces. So I'm going to turn off those slopes. So right click on my grading, my lot grading, edit surface style, and turn the slopes off. Okay, so really I'm pretty happy with the way that this is all gone. So things will start looking a lot nicer when we actually apply some smoothing to our surface, but we won't do that until we've completely finished up our pond area and all that. So I am going to leave it at that for right now, and we'll move on in the next video to creating ponds and kind of finishing out our grading surface.